by the government. Now, the sensational story spread among the locals, and today it is the stuff of national legend, of vast conspiracy theories, even sizable profits for those who managed to keep this story alive. So what really happened? The U.S. Air Force is about to tell us what it says happened. We're going over to the Pentagon now, where Colonel John Haynes of the U.S. Air Force will tell us.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure I'd like to show you this book, tell you it's $18 and head for the door, but there are two armed guards right there, and they're not going to let me out of that easily. Let me read my prepared statement, and then we'll roll a short video that Captain McAndrew will talk about, and then I will answer some questions. We're confident once the report is out and digested by the public that this will be the final word on the Roswell incident. The conclusion of the first report left no doubt that what was recovered near Roswell, New Mexico in July 1947 was debris from a formerly top-secret Army Air Force's research project, codenamed Mogul. Mogul was an attempt to acoustically detect Soviet nuclear blast and ballistic missile launches. Mogul used an odd assortment of equipment carried aloft by a balloon train more than 600 feet long. This balloon train consisted of 25 balloons, attached acoustic devices, and several radar reflectors, which looked like box kites. In 1947, it was the misidentification of these radar reflectors that is most likely the famous flying disc. Today, we're releasing the final report to address questions about alleged bodies associated with the Roswell story. This report has four main conclusions. If you have your books, turn to page 3. We'll have a lesson. 1, Air Force activities which occurred over a period of many years have been consolidated and are now represented to have occurred in 2 or 3 days in July 1947. 2, bodies observed in the New Mexico desert were probably test dummies that were carried aloft by U.S. Air Force high-altitude balloons for scientific research. 3, the unusual military activities in the New Mexico desert were high-altitude research balloon launch and recovery operations. The reports of military units that always seemed to arrive shortly after a crash were actually accurate. Descriptions of Air Force personnel engaged in the dummy recovery operations. 4, claims of bodies at the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital were most likely a combination of 2 separate incidents. 1 was a 1956 KC-97 aircraft accident in which 11 Air Force members lost their lives, or a 1959 manned balloon mishap in which 2 Air Force pilots were injured. That information is in this report. These conclusions are listed in page 3, as I said, of the book. Please roll the video.
First clip's pretty quick. I'm going to start off some Air Force high-altitude balloon operations, and the first project's going to be a NASA Viking space probe tested in New Mexico. This was launched from Roswell, New Mexico in 1972 and is recovered on the White Sands Missile Range, about 100 miles to the west. That is the Voyager Mars, another test the Air Force did also with the conflict.
Where's the body?
This is a typical Air Force high-altitude balloon launch operation in the desert of New Mexico. This is during the mid-50s. That's just a comparison of the size. You can see how many airliners you could fit inside a high-altitude research balloon at altitude. These are just some payloads, unusual payloads, not typically associated with a balloon. Next will will be the reconnaissance project Mogul. The project took place in New Mexico in 1947. This is some equipment associated with Project Mogul. There's the famous box kite that became the famous flying disc. The weather balloons that were on the balloon train. That's the tinfoil paper, rubber, and sticks that they recovered in the desert near New Mexico in 1940.
Tries to strike.
1950s. There's one of the project officers with that particular dummy is known as the Sierra Sound, manufactured by Sierra Engineering Corporation. One of the technical reports listed in the bibliography of the report. This is actually a manned subject, but that's what the dummies were used for, to test ejection.
That's not a dummy.
That's a man. Here's how the dummies were employed. 2 dummies to Iraq. Some were in a gondola. They flew up to 98,000 feet. This launch is in New Mexico. That's an upshot, and there goes the dummy. He would free fall for a period of time, and a drogue chute would deploy, and the object was to recover a human from a high-altitude aircraft. They often landed at off-range locations throughout New Mexico, often observed by civilians. This is where the recovery crews would scurry in to recover them, either with aircraft or ground vehicles. This is retired Colonel Joseph W. Kittinger, Jr. This is the culmination of the high-altitude projects that used the dummies. And that's the Excelsior 3 gondola in 1960. And that's Captain Kittinger. That is the world record parachute jump, still stands today. He free fell for 4 minutes and 37 seconds. And he did it 3 times.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Why did it take so long to come up with this conclusion? You've come up with many other conclusions.
Well, the first report was the GAO required report for Project Mogul. When Captain Gandry was doing additional research after that report had been given to the Secretary, and we were waiting to publish the second report, he was looking for additional pictures. And he uncovered some film strips of the balloon test and the dummies. And that's when he began to do further research. He sent it up the chain, and they said, this is excellent information. It's outstanding scientific research by the Air Force, and we want the public to know about it because it's the public's information.
Colonel, how do you square the UFO enthusiasts saying that they're talking about 1947, well, you're talking about dummies used in the 50s, almost a decade later?
Well, I'm afraid that's the problem that we have with time compression. I don't know what they saw in 47, but I'm quite sure it probably was Project Mogul. But I think if you find that people talk about things over a period of time, they begin to lose exactly when the date was. And there were lots of dummies dropped. There were about 2,500 balloons launched during this 30-year period in New Mexico alone.
Why do you think people in Roswell and elsewhere still are not convinced, no matter what you say?
I'm sorry, but I just can't answer that question for them. But they must look at the evidence. If you will read this book, and I'm sure you're going to take it home tonight and read it, quite frankly, you're going to find some very interesting and quite fascinating pieces of information about Air Force research. Whether you accept that as the Roswell information, I quite frankly don't know. But we do because it overlays so well with this period of time.
UFO groups Does the Air Force regret not declassifying some of this information sooner rather than just the last few years?
Great question. Nothing in here was ever classified. In the first report, everything was classified in the 70s.
How much did the study cost?
That's a good question, and quite frankly, we've not captured the data. But let me tell you that we've had no more than 1 or 2 people on it, probably not even full-time over the last 2 years. I can get that for you, but I just don't know because we just got the book on the 10th, and I don't know what the publishing costs are. Yes, ma'am.
Colonel, let me just clear up 2 things that you sort of brushed over quickly. Number 1 was the time frame that people are going to say, but this is 10 years. How could they possibly make a mistake on the 10 years? And number 2, You said it was never classified, and yet why didn't people at the time say, well, my goodness, we were having dummy tests, this explains the answer?